So fingers crossed, Monika, how it goes. And I will not stop because I already said to myself, Maja, it's needed for those ladies, but also for you to have this passion inside.
Hi, I'm Monika Chutnik, and I help leaders learn how to lead their international and virtual teams. Together with my team at ETA Leadership and Culture, we make the change happen by means of training, coaching, or facilitation. This podcast, A Step Ahead, has been created for all who want to grow in such an international remote environment, who want to grow as leaders, as HR, as change agents, and simply as humans. I'm inviting you here for discoveries and insights. All recording and materials are available at www.astepahead.pro. So talking about inclusive organizations, we pay special attention to employee resource groups and to special groups representing the underrepresented groups, or maybe some minority groups, or maybe some kinds of groups of employees. And this time I'm having a great speaker with me, Maja Paradecka from Kemira, who can tell us a bit about how to build a global women's network that drives inclusion. And we will be able to discover more about how you can create such a network, how you can really make it global, and how you can really make it grow, make it lively and vivid, and make it impactful. So I'm very glad, Maja, to be having you today. Welcome.
Welcome, and thank you, Monika, for inviting me. It's an honor and pleasure because I know your podcast, and when you ask me about Maja, let's do this interview and recording, I said, yes, why not? So here I am, and thank you for invitation.
Lovely. So let's start with the why. We want to start with why. Why is it important to talk about the women's organizations, women network in the organizational context? How do you perceive it yourself and also as a company?
It's a very good question. I think that would be good to start from the general idea of diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is one of the greatest contributors of organizations and of the success of companies. We are, as Kemira, currently very much working into the stream and supporting DEI in our company. And the resource groups were one of the pillars of DEI in order to implement that and push further diversity and inclusion. So one of the first networks was Pride in our company, which is LGBTQ plus resource group. And then women's network was also established. So as said, these two networks are kind of contributors to diversity and inclusion in case of our company. They are pushing through some of the ideas, they're changing some of the perceptions. They are also gathering teams together, and we are developing many interesting topics which are really about diversity and inclusion.
Mm-hmm. I personally really appreciate the employee resource groups as a great way to let people connect, to let people feel that there are other people in the organization who might be having the same kind of issues or the same kind of structural challenges ahead of them, or who might simply benefit for exchanging the best practice and knowledge. So I was delighted to hear about this initiative in Kemira. But what is Kemira like? It's a specific kind of a company. What kind of a business is it?
Kemira, it's a chemical company, so we are producing chemistry for two main segments for industry and water, so companies which are cleaning water, or also pulp and paper, so companies which are producing paper and they need chemistry. So I would say it's a manufacturing company, very much based on a chemistry business. This is a company located as a headquarter in Finland, over 100 years of the history. So we could say with long history roots, since many, many years, a company which is global. So having production sites all over the world. So it already, pushes us towards diversity, because we are really not only different from the perspective of the competences and other factors, but also from the perspective of cultural differences. So it's a kind of special company because having Finnish roots or we could call it Nordic roots, gives us already very stable values and very approach towards respect and making people being heard in the organization, which we are using different tools, obviously, for that, because it's a kind of big company, over 5,000 employees. But what is important is this continuous listening of our people, to hear their voice, to have possibility to change something or influence in the organization.
I'm very glad to be hearing the way you talk about that, because what you are disclosing is at the same time you are being very attentive to your people, having a very open listening ear, and having this culture of equality in the company, which is specific for Nordic organizations. But at the same time, the topic of diversity, equity, and inclusion as such wasn't really so elaborately addressed in the past years. Was it so?
In fact, it was not maybe named, but for many years we were feeling that this diversity of different regions we operate in and different people we are collaborating in, it was already provoking like many actions around diversity, like communication, thinking how to include people. But really since a few years we started working on what is it for us diversity. So we started obviously like a project team. And one of the outcomes was also our statement about D&I. So we are committed to further develop our diverse and inclusive workplace. So it's a kind of continuous process. It will evolve year after year. And we also wanted to kind of prioritize diversity and inclusion roadmap and move closer to some kind of a target, because we want that it's tangible, that we know in which direction we want to progress and what we want to focus on. So that's why we managed to agree on a target, which we name like to reach top 10% cross-industry norm for diversity and inclusion by 2025. And we are doing everything somehow, including different actions to be closer to that index, to be sure that we are doing a right thing around diversity and inclusion. So thanks to continuous employee listening, by utilizing some of the tools, we are able to double check the parameters of that norm, how we are progressing year by year. So then we can have a look what areas still we can focus on, or where are we already on a good level. So what we do, we continuously listening our people in scope of the 4 areas. So this is authenticity, belonging, inclusive leaders, and growth. And it gives us a kind of, perception in which direction we go, where should we have more focus on. And now the biggest job on our side is also translating to our employees. What are we listening from them? What does it mean for us? What does it mean, inclusive leaders? How our people perceive our leaders? What is growth and what does it mean through that question to our people? So we are on the way, to kind of feel it year by year and then be able to implement some tangible actions around that topics.
That sounds very logical, and also it sounds very sustainable. I think that's even inviolable in the sense that many organizations struggle with this short time perspective. And what I'm hearing from you is immediately taking a long time perspective and understanding how you can incorporate diversity, equity, and inclusion as one more thread in your company culture. So that's really a very harmonious kind of a feeling when I hear that from you. And what is your role, Maja, in this story? What's your role in the company? Why are you talking about that?
It's a very good question. So since a couple of months, I'm working in talent development team with 2 of my colleagues. So we are very much focused on different angles, different people processes in the organization. One of my topic is women's network, and I was really privileged to take it over and to start facilitating the women's team. This resource network was created to provide a space for our colleagues for networking, mentoring, and what is the most important, knowledge sharing for women working in Kemira. Kemira said it's a very good employer, so we already had a very good basis. We had a green light really to somehow go ahead, to start networking, to start having official resource group. So it was already given. We didn't have to struggle for that. Within that safe environment, we started with around 20 ladies. So we really started with workshopping, brainstorming. What is the role of women in Kemira? Where do we see our strengths? Where do we see challenges which we face in daily life, daily operations? And this was really astonishing because the team was already very diverse. So there were ladies from different regions we work within in Kemira. So there were colleagues from Asia, from North, South America, from EMEA region, so from different countries in Europe, such as Germany, France, Netherlands, Poland, and so on. So already when we started having these first workshops, we noticed how many things we have in common. Despite we are located in different regions, we have different functions in the organizations, different roles, we already discovered that with our power, with some kind of dedication, we feel that we could do even more to support each other. And at that point, we already noticed that we don't want to be exclusive. We want to be inclusive. So we want to also engage our male colleagues into that. So the first workshops really showed me that we have big energy, power, that we have a lot of ideas, which areas we could influence. Even thinking about networking. So how to do it smoothly, that it's not just a saying, but it's really implemented and introduced in life. So out of 20 ladies which started, we are now around 100 ladies in the resource group. And we started last year somewhere in March. So you can see it was 1 year needed to really work out what we want to do, what is our roadmap for coming year, who is in the core team. So somehow also to make structures for the resource group. And then we also included, as I said, our ambassadors. We call our males colleagues ambassadors. And they were really chosen by recommendations of the colleagues from the network. So we knew these are colleagues who are very helpful, who are really supporting a lot of initiatives, who have also a position in the company to support us. So we included them, we invited for a couple of the meetings. They were also explaining us why they would like to join Women's Network. And it was so interesting to see how many reflections they have about women in professional life, how many reflections they have about women around them in their regular life, out of work. So it was really very enthusiastic to hear how much they would like to be involved and how much they would like to help. So as said, Women's Network is working since 1 year, and I can already see how much we connected together, how many good practices we worked out, and that we have already interesting items on our roadmap to fulfill.
That's really amazing. And if we want to use your example as a benchmark for other organizations, maybe we could get a little bit more into details and ask a few how-to questions. For example, how did you find the first 20 women who wanted to be a part of this network in the very beginning?
It's a good question, Monika, because at the beginning, this was another person from my team running the network, and I was one of participants of the network. So probably these were women chosen from different regions and different functions in our organization who either were active as such, or maybe they're well known that they are engaged in some of the activities and actions. So this was, as said, it was not a bottom-up activity, but really HR somehow supported the first facilitation of the group, of the first workshop, which was a kickoff. These were women who were like the representative, different regions, different functions, different roles in the organization, from specialists to leadership roles. So probably the group was not so big. It was around 20 women, so that it could be, reasonable amount to start working in a workshop mode and starting creating some ideas. What could be good to leverage the resource group? What could be the ideas for next steps? And what could be the points we could work around to develop the activities of the network? So these were the beginnings. And as said, then I was asked to lead forward the group. So again, we had a bit of the brainstorming because we had to understand that out of the topics which we discovered we would like to focus on, what are the most crucial for us? We needed to be also very, reasonable because we are all engaged in our daily operations, in our job-specific tasks. So we need to really define what are these fruits for us to take during the year and what would be the best to focus on. And then, it started really evolving because firstly, we were like 20, then there was more communication about the network in our internal intranet. So I was then my name was given as a reference for the resource group. So other women from the organization started contacting me. So they were either writing, chatting to me. So I kind of established an induction for new colleagues. So whenever someone was approaching me, I was catching up, having a short call, explaining what we do, showing some slides, adding to all the important resources which we have. And then the lady felt, kind of accommodated, would be taking part in some actions. And then, it was like a cycle, and still it is. Still yesterday, I had a new catch up with 2 new ladies. Then, next week, I have another ladies who wanted to join us. So, step by step, month by month, more and more women were joining the team.
So what I'm hearing is that actually the very beginning started from creating a solid base. And instead of making an open call for anybody interested, you as an organization or the person who initiated the whole group decided to contact some key persons in various geographies, in various functions, in various positions, on various levels, which immediately created this diversity of the group itself. But also I imagine that the persons who were selected to be invited for the first, to the club of the first 20 were also the ones, not by coincidence, really ones who could take influence, the ones who could spread the news in their organization. So it was like finding the right person to become a seed for the next step. So I really appreciate that. I'm thinking that in some cases, companies try to just make an open call for anybody to join, and it's very proper to do so as well. And at the same time, you might be lacking some diversity depending on where the communication gets to, and also establishing the core of the direction in a group of 100 is a different process than in a group of 20. So I imagine that also it let you make the difficult choices of what you want to focus on in the first steps, in the first quarters, in the first years of the women's network. I really appreciate this approach.
That's true, Monika, because, if you're a bit smaller organization, let's say 500 employees, you can really have bigger impact even on communication. But if you're a big organization, like globally spread, then this communication is maybe more a challenge. So this first setup really helped us to come to some brainstorming sessions. And then, step by step, the word started spreading in the company. So ladies who were in APAC, so Asia Pacific region, they started talking about that and encouraging other colleagues to join. Ladies or women from Americas, from North and South, the same, and EMEA. So then, step by step, you could see that women, by whispering marketing somehow, they want to join because they see the value really in this networking, in getting to know each other, in having connection with ladies they have never had in contact before. Like I'm now talking to many colleagues from North America, which I was not in touch before, because in the business, if you are not kind of connected with your tasks, your operational duties, your job role specifics, it's very rarely that you can meet other colleagues from different regions.
Yes, that's true.
Especially now that we tend to work very much remotely, then you are even losing this possibility to meet someone in the office.
That's very true. I am currently involved in a global project for leaders. It's about developing leadership skills. And as it's a global company, they've opened a global enrollment. So the groups that I'm teaching or facilitating constitute of people from across geographies. So for example, there might be one from UK, one from Pakistan, Malaysia, depending on the time zones. And there might be 11 nationalities in one group of 16 people. So it's really amazing. And I can see how people can experience, they really have this, the leaders in this company across geographies, across functions, across departments, they seem to be having the same challenges. It's like really building a cohesion in the company. I really appreciate that very much. And as I also work in German is also the language I work in. I also run some German groups of that company, and I can see that it's really nice to be working in the local language, in your native language, and at the same time, the cohesion which is achieved is only on the national level, which I think could be upgraded. It could be upgraded, but the language barrier needs to be respected as well. So that's why I really appreciate the role of the Women's Network in building the organizational culture, because culture is something that's connecting people in the same company across geographies, across functions, across levels. That's what we really are touching on.
I have a very, interesting experience just from yesterday, because within the network, we are having a couple of the teams on which we work on, because they are on this roadmap. So yesterday we had a project team meeting with a team which is working on the topic how to share the knowledge, the technical knowledge which we have in the company, both for those who are working not so much with the production, manufacturing, so they are not so much close to our products. So there are a couple of ideas how to do it, but first 30 minutes of the session, and the meeting was very diverse because we had ladies from Canada, from Sweden, from United States, and from Uruguay. So the first 30 minutes, what we did, we were chatting and we were discussing what's going on in the, manufacturing in Uruguay. And then we, we came to the conclusion that, hey, we are utilizing so many interesting tools like MS Teams, SharePoint. We have our folders. So, hey, ladies, maybe you can show to us, how do you utilize SharePoint? How do you work with Teams to some higher level extent? Because if we're working in manufacturing, not always we are very close to the computer, for example. So it was so lovely to see that the topic was the topic of the meeting, but we had really time, peace and quiet to talk about what is in our fields. And we were also learning by doing together, investigating something in SharePoint. Then another idea came to us how we could store the knowledge which we have in the network already. We were also looking at the lady from Uruguay, how she does it. She was saying about how is now the production going, what are the investments on their side. So it was like very eye-opener, and it was a pleasure session, especially for me working in HR. So I could have this different angle and different view on that.
Absolutely.
And I could see that these ladies probably would never meet if they don't have this business point.
That makes my heart grow.
Exactly. Then somehow you sit with ladies you don't know, but you feel this relation and you feel that these ladies want to support.
It's just amazing. And I'm hearing so much learning in here. So this is really creating a learning organization where the learning happens not by somebody telling you have to learn now, but by simply people seeing the opportunity to exchange and learn. So that's an amazing additional outcome. Plus what you said about understanding different geographies, different businesses, different realities, that really creates the strategic thinking, which might be opposed to the silos thinking, which is such an issue and such a challenge in businesses nowadays. And it has become an even bigger challenge in the virtual collaboration and virtual reality. So that tells me about so many advantages and so much added value created by the Women's Network. But I'm thinking also about some specific skills which are needed to create, to set bases, and then to run and develop this network. For example, when you said that you were discussing about creating a roadmap with certain points in the agenda, I was thinking, hey, this process must have been facilitated by somebody who has the skills to manage a discussion of a group of 20, 30, 50, and 100 women. So there must be a skill that lets you involve people into a meaningful dialogue. How did you get the skill, or where did you get the skill from? Was it so that you, representing the HR department, brought this skill in by the nature of what you do at work?
Maybe it's somehow natural, but I believe also leaders who are in the organization, they also have it because they are running teams. And I can see on the example of some ladies how they do it. So I think this period of the brainstorming until we created the roadmap was very challenging because you have a lot of contributors. Everyone sees the things a bit differently and would like that the item is on the roadmap. So it was a time that there was really needed a lot of attention, but also regular meetings. So you need to be somehow stubborn and really dedicated to go through, because you feel a bit like a pain because you are pushing, you are organizer. You have to, finalize step by step. And I believe that it was the most challenging period. But when the points were on the agenda, other ladies who were coming to us and join us and they didn't maybe participate in the first workshops, they were taking that it's a great job done. We are into that. So these were not the topics that were somehow detached from others. So it seems that the topics chosen, one of them is like networking or having our own stories, sharing our stories in the group, was something which was needed. So it was not detached from neither organization or from our needs. So you need to be persistent. You need to know how to manage the project, have a bit of this facilitation because you are just a tool somehow. You are supporting, giving the space and organizing. And then you have to be kind of attentive which items to choose. But that's why we also had the core team. The core team were the ladies who were volunteers to participate in the core team. And they are from different angles, from different organizations, and they were also included in that workshops. So they were also supporting to facilitate some of the topics. So it was like a kind of, one big job to do. Besides that, we were beginners. No one of us knew how to do it. We knew, how to facilitate, how to run the project, but it was kind of experimenting. We are lucky that the whole experiment really finalized very positive. I think our organization is also about inclusion. We have the leadership principles where we say that experimenting is part of that. Sharing the mistakes, not be aware of doing mistakes, it's okay. So it really gave us a kind of permission that it's a safe space. It's not to judge anyone, but you can really contribute and build trust among the team. So I didn't need, any permissions from the top. I didn't have to verify what was on the roadmap. There was so much trust that it's not a revolution really, because we feel really included in the company and we don't want to go on strike as women, but really we want to contribute and also figure out some new tools for the company. That's why it was pleasure to work, because you didn't feel restrained or somehow, squeezed by the company, by someone who's looking at your back. That, is it everything okay? What you do? What's the network about? Maybe some magic, inside. So it was positive because it gives you, wings to go ahead.
It tells me about the level of psychological safety that you have actually functionally achieved. It all actually starts from the organizational culture which you are having at Kemira, a culture which is based on listening. And I'm thinking about the first level of psychological safety. You can only achieve it if you actually really listen to people, if you let everybody speak. And then when you told me about the beginnings of the women's network, where everybody had a chance to give their opinion, give their saying, share some of her dreams or aspirations about the women's club. Yes, we do pick some of them in the selection process, but we start from a very broad base of respecting everybody's input. And I think it's so valid. And this capital of psychological safety that you are referring to also makes it extremely comfortable for the organization. What also struck my attention was that you were thinking about how to involve men in your club from the very beginning. So it seems that this inclusive thinking has been been a part of the women's network in Kemira from the very start. And in this sense, this really is a role modeling the inclusive leadership, because you really show that it's not about just building our own club where some others don't have access, but it's about leveraging an opportunity which is available in the organization, at the same time staying open and inviting actively some ambassadors to the program. That's really amazing. I'm also thinking about how hard the selection process might have been of selecting of what's on the roadmap. And I'm referring to a conversation which I had with Sarah Cordivano in the 6th episode of this podcast. She was mentioning about how to build a DEI strategy that makes sense. And she was making a very clear statement. There are so many groups, so many ideas, so many possible goals that you might want to meet, that the first step in a DEI strategy that makes sense is selecting your priority. And you did that as the Women's Network. So you're following the best practices by your intuition. But I'm also thinking there is so much knowledge, there is so much know-how already around. Well, you didn't start building your DEI practices explicitly, 10 years ago, but only recently. But you were able to follow all the best practice that was already available in the market. So, inviting you to become now the source of best practice for others, let me ask you for some tips and tricks for other organizations, how to build a network that is creative, that is open, that drives inclusion, and that keeps growing. What would you advise to some other organizations that aspire in that direction?
Seems, Monika, very simple question, but the answer is maybe not so. I would say that you have to have a good start. So establish a good working team, a team of women or any other, employees who are in the resource group who really want to make a change. And as we said in our conversation, to give them a trust and a space that they can be heard. Because it's not that we will meet and we would say everything is okay or we don't want to contribute. It really should be a space that we say here it's okay, here we have challenges, then you know how to manage them. So first you should have a group of people. Then would be great to make some structure because the team probably would grow. So you need to have either a core team, a facilitator, and then to have a rules like maybe the core team will be rotating every year. Maybe facilitators will be also evolving and will be changed because it's always good to have a fresh eye. And then really focus on the items which you feel as a network are important. And it's not about the number that you need to have 5, 10. It's really for a good start. Sometimes it's 3, 4, whatever is important for your organization. And then if you have it and you have a good communication around that, you have a support, as said, from our side from males, but also it's very much communicated for the MB. It's communicated for our managers inside of the company that the women network exists. So then they know there is much more awareness what we do. And then I believe that everything, those components are here. Then by the marketing, even, it's like a wheel which goes ahead. Then the new members will join. And then with this structure which you have, you just need to be kind of persistent and go ahead because the communication is the key. So if you have this facilitator, the person should organize regular meetings, because you will have people who just want to listen what's going on, and that's fine. You will have those who want to be engaged in some topics and work how to develop them, and that's okay. So in order to keep the momentum and to make people informed, you need to have regularity. You can decide, is it once per month? Is it once per 2 months? But one general meeting where everyone is included. The best to have in different time zones, because you may have those who will be sleeping that time at the meeting because it's night time. So to feel them included. And then just, those who are working in smaller teams about one topics, that they also say what was done so far. So the progress is shown. On that regular meetings, we also have something like inspiration. Sometimes it's a guest. Sometimes it's an internal inspiration. So we say about new developments in the company. So two, factors. We are learning and we are also sharing what we did in the month time. And it's not only that facilitator is speaking, but also those topic members are saying what they did. And it's not like, making beautiful world, because they say, for example, here we stuck, here we need to wait, here we have some challenge. So being really fair and transparent around that. I would also say to be very attentive to new colleagues who are joining, to make a proper induction, because they cannot just jump into, the topic and be left alone. They need to know that, hey, today on the catch-up, we have 5 ladies. We talk about our needs, but also why we join, who we are in the company, what we do as a hobby. And then, you update them what is in the network. If you have this and you have support from the management side, that it is important, and you feel that it is somehow, the filler of something strategic, then you feel that it has got sense. And if the actions from the roadmap are realized and introduced, it has even more sense, because you feel that this network is not just for the network. So summing up, contributors, also the one who facilitates and really takes care, of all these inclusion aspects and communication topics. And really, always in the team, you will have those who are very active, and that's great. And those who are maybe, they don't need these activities, but they just need to be included. They want to have this update about what was done. So be aware that you have different personas in your team somehow. Don't judge that this person is not, involved. That's fine. It's okay. Maybe for the moment, the person doesn't need that.
Looking at the moment where you are as a women's network in the development process, in the evolution, it is quite certain that you will reach a certain level of participation where it will start making sense to start spreading onto smaller groups. So may I ask you about your idea? What's your way forward, if you want to disclose that to our listeners?
First of all, we will not stop with the items which we have now. So for sure, we will monitor them and we will summarize and think what will be the next year. If really right now we have 100 people. So if this would be a critical amount, then why not to even split it into the regions? But my only worry would be that we would lose this touch, which is very international one. So that we have different perspectives, sometimes different ideas or approaches to the topic. As for now, I see that it is a good point that core team will be rotating. If a facilitator of the network should be changed, it's also very good, because then this will be a different fresh eye. But for this year, it's concluding the items and looking what will be, moved or what will be still done 2024. We have also the topic as our core team to meet with other resource group on the face-to-face meeting, because we already did some workshop online with them, with LGBTQ plus team, our Camp Pride. But we want to meet face-to-face and have common workshop about what topics we have in common, like maybe some webinars about psychological safety, inclusive language, another biases. So maybe we can launch under the same, name, this kind of ideas or this kind of webinars, this communication. Because obviously we may have different targets, different goals, but at some point we have something in common as resource groups.
So again, it's networking, opening up, connecting, and creating this inclusivity, which I really love. Maja, maybe my last question to you: what's in it for you? What does make your heart beat, and what's your personal magnet in all this great women's network that you are currently developing at Kemira?
Oh, it's a good question, Monika. I'm a very social person and I love being needed and included. So for me, it's like a great inspiration that I meet people who probably I would have never met in my professional life in Kemira. I also try to learn as much as possible because I see different angles, different perceptions, different reactions from different people. It's also breaking my internal barriers. Even if I feel or seem very open and very, going ahead, sometimes I'm afraid to facilitate something. It's maybe very human, but sometimes it's so challenging to step out. I also have to push myself a bit into the situation which I'm not sure, because there was a lot of ambiguity, into the relations which are new for me. So myself, I'm building myself personally, but I would say also professionally by having networking. So now I know to whom write about some topic, who could help me even for advice. And it makes me kind of, I don't know how to name it, but I feel so good inside that I have these networks. I did some good job around that. And it's my power to go ahead, because out of my daily topics, this is something like a cherry on the cake that I can, go outside of my scope. So fingers crossed, Monika, how it goes. And I will not stop, because I already said to myself, Maja, it's needed for those ladies, but also for you to have this passion inside.
So I'm seeing how many levels you are touching with your passion. You are touching the global level with Kemira and the organizational culture and the cohesion. And at the same time, you are involving women locally for meetings face to face, which I really admire. And Maja, I also admire your amazing skill of initiating, activating and opening up. Let me wish you all the best in continuing this great activity. Thank you so much for being my guest today.
Thank you, Monika, for inviting me, and all the best for you in your company, but also in your podcast, which I love. And I remember when you started doing them, then I was thinking, Monika is always innovative. It will bring her to some, point with that podcast. And now I know, Monika, it was still before any other starting doing that. So thank you, Monika, and I'm fingers crossed for you and your company.
Thank you very much, Maja. It brought me to the point of having you as my guest. That's really great. Well, Kemira started its diversity, equity and inclusion activities a bit later than some other players in the business, but it seems that it's doing a great job. So the three things which I'm taking from this conversation is, even within the employee resource group, in this case, a women's club, pick for diversity and identify ambassadors for impact. Well, the second thing, watch others for benchmarks. There's a lot of learning already done, but point number 3, make your own by experimenting. And here we've been talking about psychological safety. Build on your culture, make it sustainable. This is the great learning which I'm taking from the session, from the conversation today. Find all the notes to this podcast episode at my website, astepahead.pro/009. This is the number of this episode. And actually what I'm going to start doing, maybe you would like to become a part of it, is let's start discussing. I'm going to organize open meetings where we can discuss what each episode made us think, what kind of reflections it brought, what kind of experiences you can share, or what kind of benchmarks you might be looking for. Let's meet in an open session, a very relaxed setting. I will be sending information to these meetings in my newsletter. So if you like to get it, please do join the newsletter. You can find it on the www.astepahead.pro. At the very top of the page, you've got the link newsletter, and just leave your email address there. If you're a LinkedIn user, I also invite you to join the profile A Step Ahead by Monika Chutnik. This is the name of the profile, so that you can get information about new interesting content. Sometimes you get a picture from this unofficial, setup of the recording with a guest. It might be interesting and funny. However, on this LinkedIn profile, you will not be receiving invitation to meetings. I really want to limit the group of people who will be there to only those who actually listen to my podcast and have decided to subscribe. If you are interested in the topics of diversity or in the topics of women at work, actually you might find quite a few other resources in my portal already. For example, the most recent episode, How to Craft a DEI Strategy That Makes Sense, a great conversation with Sarah Cordivano, who actually wrote a book on this topic and is sharing a lot of practical hints and tips on crafting a DEI strategy, among others, also how to withstand the various groups of interests and combine it together in a sustainable strategy. This is what we want to have in the outcome. So you go to stepahead.pro 006, like the number of this episode. We've also had a very good piece about psychological safety, especially in a virtual team, where I was talking with Katarzyna Romanowicz about the 4 steps to mastery, to the mastery level in psychological safety. The number of this episode is 003. So again, this is what you put in the browser. And if you are interested in an episode which might especially be interested to women, there is a great interview about being a part-time manager, the future of work, where I am talking to a person from Germany who is sharing a lot of benchmarks of what they do in Germany to enable women be both a manager and a member of a family, a mom, or whatever a woman wants to be in her private life. And that's the episode number 5. So stepahead.pro/005. Thank you very much for being with me today. Stay with me. Please send me your feedback. I'm really enjoying to hear back from you. Take care and goodbye.